What's going on YouTube? Today I have another awesome video. We're going to be talking about the SAT, ACT essays. Are they important? Do you need to even take them? I will answer those questions today, so let's get into it. All right guys, a little bit of background. In 2016, they changed the format of the SAT essay and they kind of really switched it up and it became optional. So both the SAT and ACT essay are entirely optional. You do not have to take them. When you register for the test, you can select whether you want to take the test with the essay or without the essay. And even sometimes if you do register with the essay, you can just say during the day of the test, you don't want to do it. Now, the real question is, do you need to do it or not? And the simple answer to that question I will give you right now. The answer is yes, but with an asterisk. It is very important to do the SAT or ACT essay because some schools, a handful, will require that you send it in. Will they necessarily grade you very harshly on that? Like if your SAT essay isn't good, you're going to get rejected? That's not necessarily the case. But what they will do is use it as a hoop that you need to jump through in order to actually physically submit your application. So that's why I recommend that all of you do the SAT or ACT essay at least one time. So as I said, guys, you want to remember you only have to take the SAT or ACT essay one time. As long as you get a halfway decent score, let's say average or above, you are all good. I have had students get into Ivy League schools with absolutely terrible SAT or ACT essay scores. Now that said, guys, let's get into some specifics about how you would prepare for the essay and what the format is in the event that you want to do that. Now, for each of you, you should take a second to look at the schools you're applying to. If none of the schools you're applying to require the SAT or ACT essay, you just don't have to do it. If one of them requires it, then you got to do it. So I think to cover all of your bases, if you're unsure, you probably want to just sit for it one time just to have the score on the board. Now, think about this scenario. If you do not do the SAT or ACT essay, and then one of the schools that you want to apply to does require it, you're going to have to sit for the entire SAT or ACT again just to get the essay score. And guess what? It's the last section. So you're going to have to sit there for 3 hours just to get your SAT essay score that frankly no one cares about. So definitely don't do that to yourself and try to knock the essay out on the first try. Let's talk a little bit about the format of the SAT essay. For that essay, you have 50 minutes to complete your task. The task you're given is you're set up with a speech, typically by a famous politician or some kind of famous person. This is a written speech that you have to read, and what you're asked to do is you're asked to analyze their argumentative style. How do they present their argument? What tactics do they use to convince the reader that they are correct? So on and so forth. So it is an analysis task. You are not asked to give your opinion on whether the person is correct or not. It may be, say for example, Martin Luther King Jr., one of his famous speeches. You don't have to agree or disagree with him. Hopefully you would agree with him, but you don't have to even say that because that's not the task. The task is to analyze the strength of the argument and how it's presented. So it's kind of a weird essay, and like I said, they did change that recently. So you do want to think about, if you're going to have to take it, you might want to look one over. You might want to do a little bit of practice. All right, so let's talk about the SAT essay score rubric and how it's graded. So the SAT essay, there are also 2 graders. Each grader gives you a score of 1 to 4 on 3 separate categories. Those categories are reading, analysis, as well as writing. The reading portion is basically how well they perceive you read the task and read the speech by the famous person that you're asked to analyze. The analysis score is basically how well you analyze their argument and how well you pointed out the positives and negatives. And of course, the writing score is how well you compose your answer. Each grader is giving you a score of 1 to 4 in those 3 areas, and then both scores are then added up for your final score. So the maximum score you could receive would be 8 in each category, resulting in a maximum score of 24. Now, to put it into a little bit of perspective, a score of 7 is the 99th percentile for each category. So if you score at 21 or above, you are going to be in the 99th percentile or very close to it. Now, what's a respectable score? I think if you get a combination of 5s and 6s or above, you probably don't need to take the test again. So anything in the high teens, 17, 18, 19, you're pretty much done with the SAT essay. If you did score in the low teens, 12, 13, 14, that kind of area, then you might want to consider redoing it, but it's probably not required. At the end of the day, same thing applies on the SAT essay as the ACT essay. You need to plan out your essay. You need to have paragraph structure, beginning, middle, and end to your argument, and just a generally organized essay at the end of the day. If you can do that, you'll do really well on that portion of the test. Now moving on to the ACT essay. On the ACT, you have 40 minutes to complete this essay, and on the ACT, you're given an entirely different task. On the ACT, you're presented with a current events issue of sorts, something like technology in the workplace, or should music be free, something to that effect. And you're given 3 perspectives on that issue. Each perspective gives you a different opinion on the issue at hand. You are tasked with formulating your own perspective, and it can be in agreement with any of the perspectives, it can be in total disagreement, and you have to analyze your perspective against the given perspectives and create an argumentative essay as to why you are correct and they are in fact wrong. Now, that is a total departure from the SAT essay, where you're asked purposefully to not argue any points, other than did the person do a good job of arguing their own points. Whereas on the ACT essay, you are purposefully tasked to argue your point. So we have an analysis task on the SAT, and we have an argumentative task on the ACT. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the scoring system of the ACT essay. The ACT essay is scored by 2 graders. Each grader will give you a score from 1 to 6. Obviously, 6 being exceptional, 5 also being very good, 4 being good, and then so on and so forth. Those 2 scores will be added together, so your final score on the ACT essay will be out of 12. Now, from my experience, anything 9 or above, you don't really have to take the ACT essay again. I wouldn't recommend wasting your time. If you did get something, around 6, 7 or below, you probably want to retry it if you do want to show that as part of your application. If you don't care that much, most schools also will not care that much. Now, what exactly are they grading you on within that 1 to 6? So they're first grading you on your ideas and analysis. How are you analyzing the task at hand? Are you analyzing the issue that's being discussed by the 3 perspectives well? That is going to be very important for your score. Number 2, how do you develop your arguments and how do you support your arguments? Do you use great background information and background knowledge? Do you bring in some awesome outside examples? That can help you score well in that category. Number 3 would be your organization. You have to plan out and organize your essay. The biggest mistake students make on the SAT or ACT essay is that they just start writing. They don't plan anything out, and since you're writing by hand, it's really hard to go back and edit your work. So you want to make sure to plan out your essay before you start writing it. That could really help your organization score. Now, that's where most students go wrong, so definitely remember that tip. The last thing would be your language use. How are you using, advanced vocabulary? Are you using varied sentence structure? That can help put a little cherry on top of your essay and get you those last few points. So that's pretty much the scoring of the ACT essay. Is there really a difference? Does it really matter? At the end of the day, both of these tasks are hot garbage. They're a total waste of time, and I wish they would remove them from the tests, but alas, a lot of you still have to do it. Now, why do I say that? Why is it a waste of time? Well, on your college applications, and you can check out some of my videos on that, you're going to have to write countless essays about your diversity, about your passions, about your interests, about what makes you unique, about other various things, your extracurricular activities, things that make you tick, right? No one cares about your 40-minute essay on whether music should be free or not, or if there should be machines in the workplace. It's basically not really an essential thing to review for a student's college application. But that said, requirements are requirements. You have to do what's required of you, and if you are applying to certain schools, you will have to submit it. Now, what can a good score on this do for you? Well, if you do really well on either essay, it could in some way bolster an argument for you as a very strong writer, as a very strong ELA student. So if you do feel like this is a strength for you, I would definitely take the time and try to get a good score. If it's not, you don't have to worry about it because not a lot of schools are going to look that closely at the actual score. All right, so bottom line conclusion, should I take it or not? Yes. Each person watching this video, if you're a student, you should try to take this essay at least one time. More than that, not required. That would be more of a supplemental addition to your college application. If you can do really well in it, you should definitely do that. But at the end of the day, each of you really only needs to take this essay one time, do halfway decent, and then you're done. Now, if you want to talk about some other essays, the more important essays, such as college application essays, I have another video for you guys. Check out here.